When a bull pleads for help to save his calf that fell into a well, the unexpected happens. The bellowing started just after dawn, echoing across the red dirt paddocks of Mulga Creek Station in western New South Wales. It was a sound that made veteran stockman Danny O'Brien stop mid-stride on his way to the machinery shed. In 35 years working cattle properties across the outback, he'd heard every kind of bovine call imaginable, but this was different. This wasn't the sound of a beast in distress or a cow calling for her mob. This was something else entirely. This was desperation. Danny changed direction, heading toward the sound at a jog, despite his 58-year-old knees protesting the sudden movement. The bellowing continued, relentless and urgent, coming from the direction of the old stone well near the eastern boundary. That well had been there since the property was first settled back in the 1880s. It was dry now, had been for decades, but the opening was still there, covered by a few rotting planks that the station owner kept meaning to replace. As Danny crested the low rise, he saw what was making the noise. A massive Brahman bull, easily 700 kilos of muscle and bone, was standing at the edge of the well. His name was Raja, one of the breeding bulls that had been with Mulga Creek for 5 years. Raja was pacing back and forth beside the stone rim, his head lowering repeatedly toward the opening, then lifting to bellow that same desperate call. Danny approached cautiously. Bulls were unpredictable at the best of times, and an agitated bull was downright dangerous. But as he got closer, Raja turned his enormous head toward him. The bull's eyes, normally calm and placid, were wide with something Danny had never seen in a bovine before: fear, pleading, and something that looked disturbingly like intelligence. Raja bellowed again, then deliberately walked to the well's edge and looked down into the darkness. Then he looked back at Danny. The message was unmistakable. "Bloody hell!" Danny muttered, pulling out his mobile to switch on the torch. He moved carefully to the well's edge, mindful that Raja was still right there, massive and unpredictable. Danny shone his light down into the black void below. The well was about 4 meters deep, and at the bottom, lying in a pitiful heap on the damp stone floor, was a calf. Couldn't have been more than 3 months old, cream-colored like Raja, and definitely his offspring based on the distinctive darker patch around the left eye that both animals shared. The calf was alive, but clearly hurt. It was crying weakly, trying to stand on legs that kept buckling underneath it. One front leg was bent at an unnatural angle, broken without a doubt. The poor little bugger must have wandered onto the rotting planks covering the well and fallen straight through. Danny looked at Raja. The bull was watching him intently, his whole massive body tense. Raja made a sound, softer this time, almost questioning. Then he deliberately nudged his huge head against Danny's shoulder, not aggressive, not threatening, asking, "Mate, you want me to get your baby out of there, don't you?" Danny said, amazed at what he was witnessing. Raja bellowed again and pawed the ground with one massive hoof, his eyes never leaving Danny's face. Danny immediately radioed back to the homestead on his two-way, "Boss, it's Danny. I need help at the old stone well on the eastern boundary. We've got a situation." Station owner Graham Mitchell's voice crackled back. "What kind of situation?" "Raja's calf has fallen down the well. The bull's going spare out here, and he's not going to leave without his kid. I'm going to need rope, the portable winch, and probably Doc Stevens if he's available. That calf's got a broken leg at minimum." "You're joking. The bull's staying there. Mate, he's not just staying. He's asking me to help." "I know how that sounds, but I'm telling you, this bull knows that calf's down there and he wants us to get it out." There was a pause on the radio. "Right. I'm on my way with the gear. 20 minutes. Danny kept his distance from the well's edge, not wanting to make Raja more anxious. The bull had resumed his pacing, occasionally stopping to look down into the well and make that soft, questioning sound. The calf below continued its weak crying, a sound that clearly distressed its father. "Hang in there, little mate," Danny called down. "We're going to get you out. Your old man's not going to let anything happen to you." Raja turned at the sound of Danny's voice, listening. Then, incredibly, the bull walked over to Danny and stood beside him, both of them looking down into the well together. Danny found himself reaching out slowly, carefully, and placing his hand on Raja's massive shoulder. "We'll get him out," Danny promised. "I don't know if you understand me, but we'll get your boy out." The minutes dragged by like hours. The sun climbed higher, heating the already warm morning air. Danny stayed near the well, and Raja stayed right beside him, never leaving, never backing away. Occasionally, other cattle from the mob would wander close, curious about what was happening, but Raja would lower his head and give a warning snort that sent them scurrying back. He didn't want anyone near his calf except the human who might be able to help. Finally, Danny heard the rumble of the station ute bouncing across the paddock. Graham pulled up in a cloud of red dust, jumping out with coils of rope over his shoulder and a winch under his arm. Behind him came the station's veterinarian, Dr. James Stevens, a lanky bloke in his 40s who'd seen just about everything in his career treating outback livestock. "Where's this desperate bull, then?" Graham called out. "Right here, and I'm telling you now, approach slow. He's protective, but he's not aggressive. He knows we're here to help." Graham and Doc Stevens stopped short when they saw Raja standing calmly beside Danny. The three of them gathered around the well like they were discussing a problem. "That's the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen," Doc Stevens said quietly, staring at Raja. "He's guarding the well. He's waiting for us to do something." "He's been standing here with me for the past 20 minutes, Danny confirmed. "Hasn't shown any aggression. He knows we're here to help his calf." Graham set down the equipment and cautiously approached the well's edge. Raja watched him but didn't move aggressively. Graham shone his torch down into the darkness. "Poor little bugger's in a bad way. How the hell are we going to get him out without Raja going ballistic?" Doc Stevens moved closer, and again, Raja simply watched. The bull's eyes tracked every movement, but he didn't charge, didn't lower his horns threateningly. He just stood there, massive and alert, like a sentinel keeping watch. "I think," Doc Stevens said slowly, as if not quite believing his own words, "I think he understands we're trying to help. I've read studies about cattle intelligence, about how they can recognize human intentions, but I've never seen it this clearly demonstrated." "Right then," Graham said, shaking his head in wonder. "Danny, you're the lightest of us. You're going down in the harness. Doc, you prep your kit. Once we get the calf up, you'll need to work fast. That leg looks badly broken from here." Danny stripped off his shirt in the growing heat and stepped into the rescue harness they kept on the property for emergencies. Usually it was used for machinery accidents or occasionally for pulling cattle out of bogs, but today it would save a calf's life. As they set up the portable winch, securing it to the tow bar of Graham's ute, Raja watched every movement. When Danny approached the well's edge, preparing to be lowered down, the bull stepped forward and did something that made all three men freeze. Raja gently, deliberately, pressed his enormous head against Danny's chest, not butting, not threatening, just touching, making contact. Danny stood perfectly still, feeling the weight and warmth of that massive skull against him, feeling the bull's breath on his skin. Then Raja stepped back and made that soft, questioning sound again. His eyes locked on Danny's. "I'll bring him up, mate," Danny said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise you, I'll bring your boy up." Raja snorted once, almost like acknowledgement, then backed away to give them room to work. Graham operated the winch controls while Danny was slowly lowered into the well. The stone walls were damp and slick with moss, the air cool and musty. Danny's feet touched the bottom after what felt like forever, though it was only about 30 seconds of descent. The calf was even worse up close, not just the broken leg, but cuts and scrapes all over from the fall. The little bloke was trembling, his eyes wide with fear and pain. Danny approached slowly, talking in a soothing voice. "Easy there, little mate. Your dad sent me to get you. Let's get you out of here." The calf tried to scramble away on 3 legs, but Danny was experienced with frightened livestock. He moved quickly, getting his arms around the small body and lifting carefully, mindful of the broken leg. The calf weighed maybe 80 kilos, manageable for a man used to physical labor, but awkward in the confined space. "I've got him," Danny called up. "Bring us up slow." The winch hummed as the cable took the weight. Danny held the calf tight against his chest, using his body to protect it from bumping against the stone walls as they rose. The little one struggled weakly at first, but then seemed to sense that Danny meant no harm. It pressed against him, making pitiful sounds that echoed up the well shaft. Above, Raja's massive head appeared over the rim, silhouetted against the bright sky. The bull was watching, absolutely motionless, as his calf emerged from the darkness. The moment Danny's head cleared the well's edge with the calf in his arms, Raja began making sounds unlike anything any of them had heard. Not bellowing, almost like talking, a series of low rumbles and grunts that varied in pitch and rhythm. The calf responded immediately, crying back, its voice stronger now that it could see its father. "Lay him down here," Doc Stevens directed, pointing to a padded area he'd set up with blankets. "Gently now." Danny lowered the calf onto the blankets, and immediately Raja was there, his huge head lowering to nuzzle his offspring. The bull sniffed every centimeter of the calf's body, making those soft sounds, while the calf nuzzled back, clearly comforted by its father's presence. "Raja, mate," Doc Stevens said carefully. "I need to look at his leg. It's going to hurt him, and he's going to cry. But you need to let me work. Can you do that?" The 3 men waited to see what would happen. Raja looked at Doc Stevens for a long moment, then at his calf, then back at the vet. Then, incredibly, the bull stepped back. Not far, just enough to give the vet room to work. But Raja's eyes never left his calf. Doc Stevens knelt beside the injured calf and began his examination. The little one cried out when the vet touched the broken leg, and Raja immediately stepped forward, that low warning rumble starting in his chest. But Doc Stevens kept talking in a calm, steady voice. "I know, mate. I know it hurts your boy. But I'm helping him. See, just checking, just helping." Raja stopped the warning rumble, but remained close, watching every move. The diagnosis was what they'd expected. Clean break of the front right leg, plus some bruising and minor cuts. Doc Stevens prepared a syringe with pain medication and antibiotics. "This is going to pinch him," Doc warned, glancing at Raja. "But it'll make him feel better." The injection made the calf cry out sharply. Raja bellowed in response and took another step forward. Danny positioned himself between the bull and the vet, not as a barrier, but as a reassurance, his hand on Raja's shoulder. "He's helping," Danny said firmly. "Your boy needs this medicine. Let the doc work." Raja's enormous body was tense, every muscle coiled, but he didn't charge. He just stood there, trembling with the effort of restraint, trusting these humans even though every instinct probably told him to defend his calf. Doc Stevens worked quickly, cleaning the wounds and preparing to set the broken leg. This was the difficult part. Setting a fracture on a conscious calf was painful and would require restraint. The calf would scream, and Raja would have to be kept from interfering. "We need to make a decision," Doc said, looking at Graham and Danny. "Normally I'd sedate the calf for this, but that requires transporting him back to the clinic, and I don't think Raja's going to let us load his baby into a vehicle. We can try to set it here, but it's going to be rough on everyone." "What if we explain it to Raja?" Danny said. The other 2 men looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Hear me out," Danny continued. "This bull understands way more than any cow I've ever worked with. He asked us for help. He let us rescue his calf. He's holding himself back, even though every instinct is screaming at him to protect his baby. What if we just tell him what we're going to do?" "That's mad," Graham said. "But everything about this situation is mad. Give it a go." Danny walked directly up to Raja, looking the massive bull in the eye. Raja's head was lowered to the calf's level, still nuzzling and comforting his offspring. Danny knelt down beside them both. "Raja, listen to me, mate. Your boy's leg is broken. Doc Stevens needs to straighten it and wrap it up so it can heal. It's going to hurt. Your calf is going to scream and cry. But if we don't do this, he'll never walk properly again. Do you understand? We have to hurt him to help him." Raja looked at Danny. The bull's dark eyes were impossibly expressive. Pain, fear, but also something else. Trust. Danny reached out slowly and placed his hand on the calf's uninjured shoulder, then on Raja's massive neck. "You have to let us do this. You have to trust us." Raja made a sound, that low rumbling that almost sounded like speech. Then he lifted his head and took 3 deliberate steps backward. He stood there, his whole body vibrating with tension, but he stood there, waiting. "Bloody hell," Graham breathed. He understood. The bull actually understood. Right then, Doc Stevens said, his hands slightly shaking, "Let's make this quick. Danny, Graham, hold him steady. On 3. They positioned themselves around the calf. Doc Stevens took hold of the broken leg, one hand above the break, one below. The calf sensed what was coming and started struggling. 1, 2, 3. Doc pulled and rotated, setting the bone back into alignment. The calf screamed, a high-pitched sound of pure agony. Raja bellowed in response, a sound so loud and so full of anguish that it seemed to shake the very ground. The bull lurched forward 2 steps, then stopped. Every line of his body screamed that he wanted to charge, to defend, to stop whatever was hurting his baby. But he didn't. He stood there, bellowing his pain and helplessness, but trusting these humans to help. Done! Doc Stevens worked frantically, wrapping the splint, securing it with bandages. Within 2 minutes, the leg was immobilized. The calf's screams subsided to whimpers. The moment Doc stepped back, Raja rushed forward. He nuzzled his calf from head to tail, licking the little one's face, making those soft, comforting sounds. The calf responded, pressing against its father, seeking comfort and security. "I've never seen anything like this," Doc Stevens said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Bulls don't typically show this level of paternal attachment. They mate and move on. They don't stay with calves. They certainly don't seek human help to rescue them." "This one's different," Danny said quietly. "Always has been. Remember when he first arrived 5 years ago? He was the calmest bull we'd ever had, never aggressive with the handlers, almost like he was raised as a pet. Though his papers said he came from a standard breeding operation in Queensland. Graham was filming the scene on his phone, capturing Raja's gentle interaction with his calf. People need to see this. They need to understand that these animals aren't just dumb beasts. Look at him. That's a father loving his child. That's the same emotion any human dad would feel. The question now was what to do next. The calf needed to stay still for several weeks while the bone healed. Normally, they'd separate a calf this young from the mother, bottle feed it in a small pen. But this wasn't a normal situation, and Raja clearly wasn't going to allow his calf to be taken anywhere. "We'll have to set up something here," Doc Stevens decided. "A temporary pen, maybe. Somewhere Raja can stay with the calf while it heals." "The holding yard near the eastern dam," Danny suggested. "It's got good shelter, water, and we can bring feed to them. It's isolated enough that Raja won't be disturbed by the rest of the mob." "Right then. Let's do it," Graham agreed. "But how do we move them? The calf can't walk." They looked at Raja. The bull was still standing protectively over his offspring, occasionally looking up at the humans, as if checking to see if they were going to do anything else that might hurt his baby. Danny approached again, speaking calmly. "Raja, we need to take your boy somewhere safe where he can heal. We'll need to carry him. Will you follow us? Will you trust us a bit longer?" Raja watched as Danny carefully lifted the calf again. The little one cried out, not in pain, but in fear. Immediately Raja was there, pressing close to Danny, walking right beside him as Danny carried the calf toward the ute. "This is insane," Graham muttered, but he was smiling. Absolutely insane. They laid the calf in the back of the ute on a bed of soft hay. Raja immediately tried to jump in after it, his massive weight making the vehicle groan on its suspension. "Whoa, mate," Danny called out. "You're too big for that. You'll crush the suspension. But see, your boy's in here, he's safe. We're going to drive slow. You walk alongside. Can you do that?" Raja hesitated, clearly torn between staying with his calf and following the humans' instructions. Finally, he backed down from the ute, but positioned himself right next to the vehicle's side, his head hanging over the edge so he could see his calf. Graham drove at a crawl, barely 5 kilometers an hour, while Raja walked beside the ute, his massive head constantly turned toward the tray where his calf lay. The journey to the Eastern Dam holding yard took nearly 40 minutes, but Raja never faltered, never left the vehicle's side. The cattle in the paddock stopped to watch the strange procession, but Raja ignored them all, focused entirely on his offspring. They set up the temporary recovery area with remarkable efficiency. Fresh hay, water troughs filled to the brim, shade cloth stretched over one corner of the yard to provide relief from the sun. Doc Stevens left detailed instructions for care and medication, promising to return the next day to check on the calf's progress. When they finally opened the ute's tailgate, Raja was there immediately, gently nuzzling his calf as Danny lifted it down and placed it on the soft hay. The little one struggled to stand on 3 legs, and Raja positioned himself beside it, allowing the calf to lean against his massive bulk for support. "He's going to be a good nurse," Doc Stevens observed. "Keep him calm, keep him company. That calf's got the best care possible." Over the following days, something remarkable happened. Word of Raja's intelligence and devotion spread through the district. First, it was just neighboring stations hearing the story from Graham and Danny. Then, a journalist from the local paper came out to do a story. Within a week, the footage Graham had taken was being shared on social media around the world. People couldn't get enough of the bull who'd asked humans for help and then trusted them completely to save his calf. Animal behaviorists from universities called, wanting to study Raja, donations poured into Mulga Creek Station, people wanting to help cover the veterinary costs and ensure both Raja and his calf had everything they needed. But the real surprise came 3 weeks later, just as the calf's leg was healing beautifully and Doc Stevens was discussing removing the splint. Danny was doing his morning check on the pair when he noticed something odd. Another calf, this one about 6 months old, was standing at the yard fence, bawling. Not the distressed bawling of a lost calf, but insistent, demanding attention. Danny walked over to investigate and noticed the calf had a deep gash on its rear leg, infected and weeping. The wound was several days old, probably from catching itself on barbed wire. It needed treatment urgently, or the infection would spread. "Where's your mum, then?" Danny looked around but couldn't see any cow nearby. That's when Raja did something that made Danny's jaw drop. The massive bull walked to the fence, looked at the injured calf, then turned his head and looked directly at Danny, then back at the calf, then back at Danny. The message was crystal clear. "You're having a laugh," Danny said. "You're asking me to help this one too." Raja snorted and pawed the ground, his eyes moving between Danny and the injured calf. Danny radioed Graham. "Boss, you're not going to believe this. Raja's got another customer for us." Word spread quickly, and within an hour, Doc Stevens was back at the property, this time with a small audience. The district vet officer had come along, curious about these reports of the incredibly intelligent bull. They treated the wounded calf at the fence line, while Raja watched from inside the yard, his own calf now standing comfortably on 3 legs beside him. It's like he's appointed himself the district emergency responder. the vet officer said in amazement. How does he even know to ask humans for help? Maybe he doesn't see us as different as we think, Doc Stevens suggested. Maybe to him, we're just part of the mob. And when someone in the mob needs help, you ask for it. Over the next 2 months, it happened 3 more times. A calf with a respiratory infection, a young cow with a prolapsed uterus after a difficult birth, a steer that had been attacked by wild dogs. Each time, the injured animal somehow found its way to Raja's yard, and each time, Raja would catch Danny's or Graham's attention and make it clear that help was needed. The media dubbed him the Bull Ambulance. Scientists were baffled. How was he communicating with other cattle? How did they know to come to him? How did he know the humans would help? But for Danny, Graham, and the other stockmen at Mulga Creek, the explanation was simpler. Raja had learned that humans could be trusted to help, and somehow he'd taught that lesson to other cattle. He'd become a bridge between species, a living demonstration that cooperation and compassion could cross even the most unlikely boundaries. 6 weeks after the rescue, Doc Stevens removed the splint from Raja's calf. The leg had healed perfectly. The little one, now named Lucky by unanimous vote, could walk normally, even run a bit, though with a slight limp that would probably remain for life. The question now was whether Raja and Lucky would return to the main mob or stay in their recovery yard. Graham opened the gate one morning, giving them the choice. Raja looked at the open gate, then at Lucky, then back at the gate. Father and son walked through together, but they didn't go far. Just to the shade of a large coolibah tree about 50 meters away, where they could still see the yard. Within a week, injured cattle were still finding their way to Raja. But now, the pattern had shifted. Raja would notice an injured animal, approach it calmly, and then literally lead it to wherever humans were working. To the homestead, to the yards where stockmen were sorting cattle, to the vehicles driving through the paddocks. Graham set up a dedicated recovery area near the main yards, with Raja's yard connected to it. The bull had essentially appointed himself as the station's animal welfare officer, and no one had the heart to tell him it wasn't his job. The story made international news. Mulga Creek Station became famous, not for its cattle production, but for its remarkable bull. Universities offered to buy Raja for research, offering enormous sums. Graham refused every offer. He's not going anywhere, Graham told the latest researcher who'd made the trip from Sydney. This is his home. This is where he's chosen to do his work. And mate, I reckon his work is more important than any research project. On the anniversary of Lucky's rescue, the local community organized a celebration at Mulga Creek. Children came from 3 districts away just to meet Raja and Lucky. News crews filmed the bull calmly accepting pats from dozens of people, his son standing proudly beside him. Danny O'Brien stood at the fence, watching the scene, a cold beer in his hand. Doc Stevens joined him. Never thought I'd see the day when a bull would prove to be smarter and more compassionate than most humans I know, Doc said. He's not smarter, Danny replied. He just figured out something we humans took thousands of years to learn. When someone needs help, you ask for it. When someone asks for help, you give it. Doesn't matter if they're the same species or not. Doesn't matter if there's anything in it for you. You just help. Raja, as if hearing his name, looked over at Danny and Doc. The massive bull's eyes seemed to hold understanding, even wisdom. He made that soft rumbling sound, the one they'd all come to recognize as his way of saying everything was all right. Then he lowered his head and nuzzled Lucky, who was entertaining a group of children by accepting scratches behind his ears. Reckon he's changed how we look at cattle on this property, Graham said, joining them at the fence. Hell, reckon he's changed how a lot of people look at cattle everywhere. My daughter's gone vegetarian because of him. Says she can't eat something that's smart and caring. Danny laughed. Well, Raja's still a breeding bull. He's got a job to do. but I reckon he's also got a second career now: teacher, healer, bridge between worlds. As the sun set over Mulga Creek Station, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds, Raja stood with his son and his human friends, living proof that intelligence and compassion could be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes all it took was one creature brave enough to ask for help and humans wise enough to listen.